Introducing Season 3, Hi-Rez has changed a lot about the jungle. This is problematic for the jungler and makes it really easy to fall behind. I'm gonna get into what exactly is causing these problems. The most obvious one is the removal of the speed buff. Not much to say about that, it's just a weird decision to completely take that away from the jungler. The jungler needs this for early rotations, he needs it to chase enemies down, and I understand that it was removed when it had the extra attack speed on top of it as well, but the way it is now, it's not very helpful. But before this ends up being a boring rant, I want to show you something else, and that's the XP values in Season 3. I've done quite a few calculations, this is the result for the whole map. It's not going to be very helpful like this, but when you compare these numbers to Season 2, you're going to see some interesting changes. By the way, all the material here will be linked in the description for you to check back on. The whole fucked up result is this. You can see here that the total XP you gained in the jungle in Season 2, when there were less camps, was actually higher than it is now. I've calculated this assuming that you only get one mid-camp, but it's not relevant in the end because the mid-camp stayed exactly the same. What changed is the XP value for the buff camp for no apparent reason, and I think this wasn't even in any of the patch notes. I tried to find it, I couldn't find it, correct me if I'm wrong here, but the XP value for buff camps was nerfed down. It was nerfed down even further than it is now, and then the only patch note I could find on it was in PTS Phase 2, where the value got increased by a little bit again, but still not the same value as in Season 2. Additionally, there are the new boars, and the boars are just terrible. The boars give less XP and less gold than a buff camp would, while not providing you with any additional benefit. Aside of that, they're harder to clear because you can't just focus your auto attacks on the big minion and then auto clear the small minions with AoE attacks, but instead you have to take them both down at the same time, at the same rate, same damage, same tankiness. Then there are the fire elementals who just have a shitty value overall. They're not worth it in comparison to anything else. They're worth less than 2 archers in a wave. There's just no reason to do them unless there's nothing else up on the map and no wave exists anywhere. And even in that case, you're probably better off just ganking someone. So what does all of this leave us with? The whole jungle gives you less XP than last season. It's worth as much as roughly 4 waves. 4 waves are very easy to clear because you don't have to take damage, you just stand behind them and basically safe farm. Meanwhile in the jungle you have to take damage for every camp you do, unless you have so much damage that you heal up more than you take from the camp, which is not the case early on. Additionally, the camps are further away from each other, meaning it takes you longer to clear all of them, meaning it takes you longer to level up. On top of that, there is no speed buff, meaning it takes you even longer to walk around. So effectively you end up with a lot less XP than in Season 2. Besides, teammates will see less value in clearing with you, because boars are just not that great. They don't give them any extra buffs, anything that would give them a reason to help, and the XP is just not that high. Effectively, this means you will sit on lane much longer if you ever fall behind just to get up in XP again. The jungle would have more gold now, but the point is that you still have to run around more to get it, and you still don't have the speed buff. So I'm just really hoping for the speed buff to return. The speed buff could fix all of these problems. I don't think it was a good idea to split it up between the two junglers and putting it in a contested area, because this simply gives an advantage to early game junglers. But having them, maybe putting the blue buff where the speed buff used to be before, so you have some contestations around the blue buff for the solo laners instead of the yellow, would actually make a lot of sense. One could argue against all of this and say, hey look, there's a ton of new movement speed items as well that make up for it. But the majority of these items is actually terrible. The only one that's really good is Stone Cutting Sword, and you won't be able to buy that early because it's pretty expensive. It also doesn't help mage junglers at all. However, I don't really think that mage junglers need any help at the moment. They have enough damage to compensate for it. Also, I'm not saying that jungle is bad per se. Especially Fenrir, Thor are just incredibly strong at the moment with the beats nerf. But that's not really the point of this. If getting the speed buff back is really not an option, then what should be considered is increasing the XP value. We have the potential to make late game junglers a lot more potent. However, we need extra XP for that, and not less XP than last season that is gained in a longer time period. In conclusion, I don't think jungle is fucked. I think jungle needs some help because it doesn't have the speed buff and has less XP than last season. The extra gold is not going to help enough. Please compensate in some way. Or maybe reconsider the movement speed items so they're actually worth something and get some CDR on them or attack speed, I don't know. There's enough you could do with them as well. Just anything that helps the jungler in the current meta to keep up with the rest of his team better and, just level up normally. Thanks for watching or listening or whatever you want to call it. Dukesloth out.